So today we're going to be talking about a case that I'm honestly quite alarmed has not been at the forefront of the media, at least where I've been. Now, granted, I have a lot of silly shit on my social media, but at the same time, since I discuss and look up true crime very, very often, you'd think that the algorithm would feed me true crime, which it does, but it did not feed me any of this, which is alarming because, like I said, this is a crazy, crazy case, mainly because I'm always not thrown off, but shocked when cases involve the youths, and I'm talking about young teenagers. So that's what we're going to get into here. Brace yourselves because it's grisly. So it starts from the end of the story, but it makes sense, don't worry. So it says, Harvey Willgoose killer sentenced to at least 16 years. A 15-year-old boy has been detained for life with a minimum of 16 years for the lunch break murder of fellow pupil Harvey Willgoose. Umar Khan stabbed Harvey, who was also 15, through the heart with a hunting knife at Sheffield's All Saints Catholic School in February. Khan was named by Mrs. Justice Naomi Ellenbogen after she lifted a restriction on his anonymity during sentencing at Sheffield Crown Court. Harvey's mother, Caroline Willgoose, said she felt like a big weight has been lifted off my shoulders.
Stand up, please, Umar. I shall now summarise the sentence which you will receive and what it means for you. For the murder of Harvey Willgoose, I pass the only sentence which the law allows me to pass for someone of your age. That is detention during His Majesty's pleasure. You will remain in secure custody until the parole board decides that you are suitable to be considered for release. The shortest period of time during which you must remain in custody is 16 years, less the number of days which you have spent on remand. I have been told that that period is agreed to be 259 days. Therefore, the minimum term which I impose in your case is 15 years and 106 days.
Now, we're going to get into exactly what happened, like what led up to the murder. That being said, I think you can understand why it is alarming to me that this crime has not received more attention, because school shootings are horrific, obviously, and there are plenty of young teen victims who die in that. The reason that this is so shocking to me is mainly just the level of violence here, and granted, we see violence in school shootings. This is different. I'm not saying one's more tragic than the other, but it is a different type of violence when it's hands-on, right? Because a big part of in the psychology of crime, I suppose you could call it, one of the reasons they say that people use guns or even snipe people is because there's a separation between you and the person, and that also functions as a kind of mental separation to kind of shield yourself and kind of absolve yourself to say like, oh, that wasn't really me, I just shot this bullet and it happened to hit them, as opposed to obviously something like hand-on-hand combat where you're, hands-on. This is obviously more hands-on, and it also being in the UK, I kind of thought that it would make bigger news because the UK doesn't get shootings like the US, so this should stand out more, though of course there are stabbings regardless. You get where I'm coming from? This feels like it should be bigger news. End of. I don't know why I turned it into a whole thing. Khan was in year 9 when he stabbed Harvey, who was his former friend, in the school courtyard after two teenagers had quarreled over social media the days beforehand. Mrs. Willgoose said she was glad the killer's minimum term had been raised above the legal minimum. Outside court, she said Harvey and her father, who had died last week, had been best friends and had been building a summer house together. My dad has been having cancer treatment through the trial and he just couldn't hold on anymore, she said. I do feel that he is with him. She said she was glad he got to see the knife arches being put into some schools as a result of the family's campaigning. So immediately I felt really bad for Harvey's mom. She lost her father and her son in a short amount of time. That's horrendous. So that in and of itself, I can't imagine. Aside from that, I didn't know what knife arches are. When I look it up, it's just a metal detector, it seems like, but it's used to screen for metallic weapons like knives. So I don't know if there's anything that makes it more specific to knives, but it's a metal detector. I will say the general concept of kids of that age bringing weapons to school, obviously it's scary. More than anything, when I see things like this, there's a sense of bewilderment, and I suppose that comes from a place of privilege in the sense that I was lucky that I never went to a school where anything really happened in terms of at least middle school and high school, but I can't even conceptualize of someone bringing something like that to school, which again says something about the schools I went to. I was lucky in that. I was lucky that the peers I was with weren't trying to do anything like that. But at the same time, it also makes me profoundly sad that we've gotten to the point where we need to have metal detectors. By all means, have them, because of course, if there are students showing up with knives, have the metal detectors. But it's crazy how schools are slowly moving to seeming more like airports, like all this security. And it's like, if there's security at a school, I'd like for it to be for the security of the children. And granted, these metal detectors are to protect the children, but ideally, it would be that nobody in the school is trying to start shit, hurt someone else, kill someone else, whatever. So when I see things like this, it kind of feels like an unsolvable issue. To be honest, it really does feel like an issue that just has no real solution, and you can put all these precautions in place, but at the end of the day, you know that people will find a way nonetheless. And I suppose that says more about not the society we're in, because like we live in a society, but really just where we're at. Because once upon a time, the worst thing school could be was boring. Now it's potentially death. A lot of these schools really do feel reminiscent of prison when you hear about crimes like this, because this sounds like someone who gets shanked in prison, right? And that's not to belittle getting shanked in prison, but a school should have nothing in common with prison. So the fact that that even comes to mind for me, I think is a pretty bad sign. So it says, before the murder on the 3rd of February, Khan and Harvey had taken opposite sides in a separate conflict between two other pupils, which led to the school being briefly locked down on the 29th of January. During the trial, the jury was played CCTV from the day of the stabbing, which showed the killer approaching Harvey in the courtyard shortly after midday. The pair stood for a moment, appearing to talk, before Khan pulled out a knife and stabbed Harvey in the chest, severing a rib in the process. The trial heard from fellow pupils who described a scene of chaos as people were running, screaming everywhere. Khan told jurors he had not intended to kill Harvey or cause him serious harm, claiming he could not remember what had happened. He said he had snapped and lost control of his actions, adding that he had been bullied and could get angry quickly. He said he had experienced racist abuse and taunts on social media about a medical condition, and that he'd been neglected and suffered physical and emotional abuse at home. However, the prosecution said he wanted to show he was hard and knew exactly what he was doing. They said he had an unhealthy interest in weapons and looked up zombie killer knife and other blades online, and had also taken pictures of himself with weapons, including a knife and axe, to warn people to stay away. I'm going to say this. A lot of the behavior Khan is exhibiting sounds like a lot of the behavior we've seen in the States from school shooters. The posing with firearms or taking pictures of firearms or whatever weapon, a lot of school shooters have done that, especially in the recent years with social media, whatever. That's a common thing. Obviously, doing research on weapons, also a common thing. So the concept that he didn't want to actually kill, the fact that he said he didn't actually want to kill Harvey is not credible to me in the least, mainly for a few factors. First of all, if you don't want to kill someone, why are you stabbing them in the chest? Just as a general notion, stabbing in the chest if you don't want to kill someone, I'd say stab anywhere else but the chest, because the chest, notoriously, you can kill someone, right? Especially if you're not well informed on anatomy, which I don't know how informed this kid was, but it seems like he's claiming a level of ignorance, so let's roll with that. You don't know anything. Stabbing in the chest, like if you'd stabbed him in the leg or the arm or whatever, I can believe that you didn't want to kill, but stabbing him in the chest, especially severing a rib, what were you aiming for severing a rib? Like, all the organs are in this area. What were you aiming for then? The thing of not wanting to kill him is just not credible, so let's throw that out the window immediately. Aside from that, I don't know what Khan was dealing with at home, but to me it also just sounds like he's spouting off a laundry list of things. So he was bullied, he was having a hard time at home, he was also the subject of racism, taunts on social media due to a medical these are like a billion different things. And granted, it's possible that all those things were wrong, that all those things were causing tension, frustration, deep rage potentially, but you understand why it sounds like a laundry list, right? Because it sounds like the typical excuse making of, instead of taking accountability and saying, yeah, I went too far, I lost my shit because there's pressure in my life, I start listing, oh, well, my car broke down the other week, and then someone said something I didn't like, and then I was hungry, and so I snapped. And it's like, okay, some of these are not actually valid reasons, right? You understand that even if they're true, it's not a valid reason to kill someone. It's a valid reason to be frustrated. It's a valid reason to, maybe lash out. And by lashing out, I mean snapping at someone at most, right? But there's nothing that you've listed here will ever make it so I say, oh yeah, that's, you killed someone because shit's going on. No, I'm sorry, absolutely not. And I don't know what the school's mental health service system is, if they have anything. I don't know what is available, but there always is something better than resorting to this type of stuff. Also because this is premeditated, right? If you're looking up different types of knives, if you're posting pictures to show that you're hard online, I'm sorry, I'm not going to believe that you just snapped. Like, you just snapped and you happen to have the knife that you researched on. Why did you have the knife on you? Because if it wasn't going to be Harvey, now I feel like it was going to be someone else. Also, if you see the footage, I'll try to put it in. It depends on if BBC copyrights me. I'll try to put it in. But if you see the footage of them in the hallway, it really does look like Khan is pushing Harvey around and Harvey is barely responding. Like, he's stepping back. He's not really doing anything. So this is the other part of... It looks like Khan was looking for a fight and it looked like Harvey wasn't engaging in what we saw, right? And I know one thing about people who are frustrated and are looking for a fight, they will push you until they either hurt you or you fight back, or potentially both, I suppose. That's what it looks like in this clip. If I remove it from this video because I get copyrighted, it'll be linked in the description box. Sentencing him, Mrs. Justice Ellen Boggins said, "You were the aggressor and you acted in hurt and anger at what you considered to be his betrayal of your friendship. This was a serious crime carried out by one pupil on another on school property with a knife he brought into school. It was witnessed to varying degrees by other pupils and teachers." The judge added that she had lifted the under 18 anonymity order on Khan because knife crime and the circumstances of this case were of substantial public interest. She said the public will wish to know the identity of those who commit such offenses in seeking to understand how it is a child of that age can do so. I have a potentially unpopular opinion on this one, but if you are under 18, but you are dangerous and a murderer, my concern for your anonymity becomes very low. Also, for the fact that depending on how much prison time you get, in this case, obviously it's a lot of prison time, right? But if you didn't get much prison time, people should be aware of what you did to, I don't know, stay away from you, be warned about you. I think it's just for public safety. And even when this kid gets out, people should be able to know, oh yeah, this is a murderer, because that's what you are. And people should know so they can choose whether they want to be around someone like you instead of being subjected to potential danger just because we have to hold on to anonymity. Once you commit a crime, there are very few situations where I think you should have anonymity as the perpetrator of a crime, especially murder. Even parents, they should be able to know who their kids are around. If they know your name, if they know who you are, they don't want kids around you, that's what it is. All Saints Catholic High School said Harvey was dearly missed and every day by the whole school community. A statement read, "Our thoughts are first and foremost with Harvey's family, loved ones, and friends. We cannot begin to imagine the depth of their loss, and our deepest sympathies go out to them today and every day. This tragedy has also deeply affected our community, and we continue to do what we can to support all those impacted." The statement said Harvey was a popular, energetic, and fun-loving pupil who is dearly missed every day. It is said, "We thank the court, police, and other relevant agencies for their diligent and professional work throughout this process. Since the conclusion of the trial, the school and trust have been able to engage fully with a number of ongoing investigations aimed at answering key questions about Harvey's tragic death. We will continue to work closely with these partners and cooperate fully with these investigations." The school can't be fully to blame, right? Because the students can have things, can hide things, there are ways students can get around. So I don't think it's fair to just blanket guilt the school for this, right? The school can't be guilty for everything. Should they have more checks? Should teachers have been more aware? Should someone have jumped in? All of those things, yes. But at the same time, I think there are certain ways that kids get past the school. One thing I will say is it depends on how attentive the teachers and staff generally are to some of the kids' behaviors, right? Because I don't know what Khan was and is like in school, but one thing we can say is that if he was already exhibiting behaviors prior, if there are little inklings, little clues that someone is not quote unquote okay in the sense of their behavior does not meet the standards a school has of, healthiness, mental health, well, that should have been accounted for in the sense of, did he go to a counselor? Did anyone ever talk to him? Did they keep note of incidences that occurred before to keep a closer eye on him? You know what I mean? I think a lot of things that happen in schools are the fault of teachers not taking note. And I don't just mean teachers, I mean the general staff of the school not taking note and not holding on to records either. So things just slide and then you're all surprised that this one kid is a shooter or this one kid stabbed someone else. And in reality, when you look back on their record, it's like, oh, they actually had a lot of incidences that led up to this. We should have seen it coming. You know what I mean? So in this case, I don't know how much the school saw or didn't see, but of course, some of the blame has to also be on them because when kids are at school, the school is supposed to be taking care of them, all the staff, so on and so forth. So, Detective Chief Inspector Andy Knowles, who was the senior investigating officer on the case from South Yorkshire Police, said, "I can't begin to imagine how harrowing this has been for his family, and I want to personally thank them for the courage they have shown throughout the investigation and subsequent court process." Something that became prevalent during this trial was Khan's misguided belief that carrying a knife would make him safer or that it would grant him some sort of status, but in reality that knife had devastating consequences not just for Harvey and his family, but for also Khan himself. He said it was a split-second decision which can't be taken back. Detective Chief Inspector Knowles added, "All those lives have been forever changed by this incident, and had a knife not been introduced into that situation on the 3rd of February, things would almost certainly have been very different. We all have a part to play when it comes to changing perceptions around carrying knives and other weapons, and that is why it is so important to have an open and honest conversation." I agree with all of that, but the reality is that beyond conversations, like I said before, there has to be a level of not surveillance in schools, but I remember when I was in high school back in the day, because I turned 32 this weekend, so high school feels particularly far away now. But anyway, back in the day, I felt relatively observed. And granted, I did go to one crazy high school when I lived in China, but it still felt like I was observed enough that I even felt uncomfortable being on my phone. I just felt watched, right? Even when I was allowed to be on my phone, I just felt watched. So the concept of someone feeling comfortable, quote unquote, enough to show up to school with a knife and just snap like that, yeah, it says that you're mentally unwell and you have anger and rage problems probably or something like that. But it also says to me, is anyone really watching? So another disappointing thing is that with social media, I just looked on TikTok just to see if there was footage or additional information, whatever. And in the comments, this one video that has 7,000 plus comments, a lot of the top comments are talking about how Harvey was a bully. Willgoose was a bully. And I've been bullied. I have absolutely no sympathy for bullies. In fact, bullies often push people to kill themselves, so none of that from me. That being said, we cannot justify murdering someone because they're a bully, if that is even true, because these are all allegations. I'm just saying in the conditional, if it were true that Willgoose was a bully, Harvey Willgoose, if he was a bully, still we can't push this narrative, oh, this kid was bullying you, therefore you're allowed to stab him, break his rib, and have him just die. Okay? That's absolutely not how it works. If anything, we should be telling children to immediately tell their parents, immediately tell a professor, a teacher, whatever the case may be. And I know that it's high stakes because if they don't do anything and people found out that you told the teacher, then people might bully you for that as well. But it is 100 times better to risk that than not. From me, who was bullied, I remember I told my mom that I was getting bullied, and she showed up to school and went to the class of that girl who was bullying me. I think she was like 3 or 4 years older than me. And this was when I was in 5th grade. I think she was like in 8th or 9th. And my mom went to her class, waited for class to start, knocked on the door, and in front of everyone told the teacher that I was being bullied. So everyone became aware in her class, including the teacher. That girl never came close to me ever fucking again. Because honestly, I think the shame of someone outing you in front of everyone like that makes it look really bad. To be fair, she did dump Sprite in my backpack on a day where we had to give in all of our homework. It's a whole thing. Anyway, tell someone. Always just tell someone. There's nothing to be lost by telling someone, because if you're gonna get bullied anyway, you might as well get bullied for snitching and telling someone, because they're gonna bully you anyway. You might as well take the chance and have someone help you. A lot of the times, bullies just need a tiny bit of fear of consequence and they're done, okay? Obviously, it's not always that easy, but it's worth a try. So in this TikTok shared by a family member of Harvey's, in this TikTok, they share that Harvey was a school refuser. I'll show you the TikTok here.
Say it. You've got to say it now.
Yeah, good luck.
Say what you're going to do.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to go to school on Tuesday or Monday.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
The fact that he was a school refuser, I'm not saying means he wasn't a bully because of the allegations on TikTok, which I don't know how true all of those are. Regardless, even if he was a bully, being a school refuser to me tells me that you were deeply unhappy at school and that you might have even felt threatened at school. Again, I don't know what the case was, but I think it says a lot when someone doesn't want to go beyond, the usual teen thing of, I don't want to go to school. When it's deeper than that, when it's like, I really don't want to go, usually something is very, very wrong. Now, I don't know where all of the victim blaming is coming from at this very moment in time, because I'm seeing it all over TikTok, but I haven't seen elsewhere that he was a bully. I saw that him and Khan were friends at one point, so I don't know what all is the situation with falling out, who's bullying, who's not bullying. I don't think anyone can really know that other than other students, especially people close to the victim and potentially to Khan. So I'm not going to make any judgment on that, though the main thing still is if someone's bullying you, you're still not allowed to murder them, which is why I'm saying speak to someone. Anyway, all of this made me lose a lot of faith in humanity, because the fact that we're even having these types of conversations on TikTok where it's like, oh, well, he was a bully, so it's okay to... No, that is absolutely not how it works. There's so many people in my life who I could have qualified as bullies for really, really fucked up shit that they did. I can't go out and stab them, okay? If you need to do with anything like that, think about it mentally and then decide to not do it. But this whole kind of rhetoric that I'm seeing online is so alarming to me, because it's minimizing these acts of violence to say like tit for tat. And it's like, this isn't tit for tat, and that's not how the world works, and that's not how we're gonna solve anything. This is so frustrating. So anyway, you guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Let me know if you even heard about this, because it seems like nobody has, and that's also alarming to me, considering this is a case involving 15-year-olds, and that's horrendous. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.